it's eventually setting in, it's sinking in that our reality has changed, that the country that we knew, that we had aspirations for, is changed forever. That means that now we have to accept the ground reality and have to find a way to work around it, or a way to transform it into something that is workable and livable for us.
Obaidullah, what is your day-to-day life like at the moment?
Well, the banks are shuttered. The universities are pushing back the dates of their exams. And other than that, you go out on the road, you don't see too many people compared to how many you would see normally in Kabul. You don't see a lot of four-wheel drives. People are driving in smaller cars. There are very few armored vehicles, and the ones that you do see are being driven by the Taliban. The Taliban, with regards to administration, are really not there. There's no administration with regards to the government. They haven't announced ministers. They haven't even given an indication of what sort of government they'd set up. So everything's really in the air. It's like the city is on hold and on pause, and we're waiting for the next move from the Taliban.
Abdullah, you mentioned that you're alone right now. Where are your friends and family? Have they managed to get out?
I was here. It's been 2 years since I traveled to Kabul from Australia, from Sydney, where I'd done my postgraduate studies. And a lot of the friends that I made here were the educated elite. There were people who were heading organizations, who were working for the government, and or were lecturing, were academics here. And yeah, on the day that Kabul fell, it was the start, and I'm still trying to make sure that a few of my friends manage to make it to the airport so they can get out. Being in the public sphere has its risks, and especially now, despite the promises made by the Taliban, there are apprehensions. There is a gap of trust between the educated populace that has conceived or perceived the Taliban to be enemies for 20 years, and to accept them as the new government isn't that easy. There have been instances where individual Taliban fighters have taken justice into their own hands and have prosecuted people. So just to avoid any such reprisals, people are trying to leave the country.
So I wanted to ask you about the US presence in Afghanistan over the last few years. What changes did that bring? Did it have a positive impact on your country, do you feel?
Look, there's a success story and there's a failure within the same question that you're asking. So the United States and its allies, including the setup that was in Kabul in the major cities, it did manage to change the lives of people living in the major urban centers. People got educated, women and minorities got to participate in day-to-day life, and it gave them a dream and aspiration to become someone and change the country for the better. The failure was that never managed to trickle down into the rural areas. That means that 90% of Afghanistan really didn't see much change in the past 90 years. Whatever funding was allotted to the development of these provinces and districts would always seep through the pockets of corrupt politicians. And what that led to was 20 years later, the rural population stood by the side of the Taliban, not because they supported the Taliban, but because they were that disappointed with the republic. And they chose whatever alternative existed. And that's a sad reality. And that's a failure of democracy in this region, and I hope that hadn't happened.
The state of the government at the moment, the provincial government that has kind of abandoned the country, including the leader leaving the country as things changed.
Well, I'd like to use the analogy of a headless chicken. So right now, Afghanistan is a state without a government. We do not have, and then the problem isn't the head of the government. The problem, there are quite a few issues here. The issue is that with Ashraf Ghani, ex-president, fleeing, that meant that he wasted an opportunity of a democratic transition of power, which would have safeguarded all the institutions in Afghanistan, including governmental bodies, including the national army. And because he fled the way that he did meant that There was a complete disintegration of the armed forces. That means that we don't have governing bodies functional in Afghanistan, and people and regional players have been advising the Taliban, urging them to install people, at least for the most important ministries, so some sort of administration of government can happen. One of the major reasons the airport crisis is in the state that it is because there is no one to talk to from the Taliban with regards to the access and or even a humanitarian corridor that can be established. So these are things about governance that are very important that the Taliban are failing to realize the importance of. So right now, Afghanistan is a governmentless state.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.